When I began talking to the organizers here at TEDxLahoreWomen and their amazing gathering, I shared some ideas with them about what I would talk about. And one of them, Sonia, she suggested that I should talk about my experiences about growing up in Lahore and how growing up in a city like this shaped the way I experienced the city in a intimate manner. Now that made me really happy, but it was also interesting that that was suggested. Because the fact is, I did not grow up in Lahore. My parents did not grow up in Lahore. I was not even born in Pakistan, let alone Lahore. My association with Lahore began in 2003 when I came to Lahore to join a local university to study architecture. But coming to Lahore was not an unconscious decision on my part. It was something that I very carefully decided that I would come to Lahore to start my own independent life. For someone to think about the matter like this at the age of 16, it seems unlikely that that was true, but it was. And the reason for that was that I was born and I grew up in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And trust me, for a girl, that is no fun at all. With the restrictions on women that is placed over there, and the cultural alienation that us expats felt, despite our best efforts of integration, I knew that that was a city that would never fully own me. I knew that that was a city that I could never belong to. So that made me strive to find and identify my own home city if I had to. And today, no one can call me an outsider in Lahore. But that's not because of the social circle that I've created around me. That's because I am so fully ingrained in the idea of what Lahore has come to be known about. And I'm so fully invested in playing my role in shaping Lahore to be the city that it has the potential to be. A city that I know will reflect values that I know to be just, fair, and sustainable. Today, I'm a Lahorean, but I don't take that for granted because I put in so much effort into it that I didn't do. But I've always also warned against romantic, nostalgic notions of the city that was. I've always tried to steer away the dialogue from ruminating, endlessly ruminating about the city that Lahore was. Because that stops us from growing. That stops us from recognizing the deep inequalities that the city has always had and continues to have to this day. That stops us from realizing where we want to take this city and how. I would have never understood Lahore and the true quality of Lahore if I had only viewed Lahore through that lens. Because the beauty of Lahore lies beyond that notion of beautiful Lahore that once was. It lies in the way that we shape it and reshape it every single day as citizens. Because we have to know that cities are very active political and social realms. And to think of them as passive entities that have no role in shaping our behaviors or our interactions is to be extremely naive. Every building that you see around you, every building that is built in the city has an impact on the experience of the city. Every road that is constructed has an impact on the way you move to the city, and that's how you inhabit it. So I want you to recognize that design is powerful, and design of the built environment is even more powerful in shaping the way we interact with each other, in shaping our behaviors, but also that it reflects our values. The cities reflect our values. And so it is an extremely potent tool that can be employed in shaping or critiquing this landscape. As a young architect setting out on a career in academia and practice, I know that I share the anxiety of many of my contemporaries when we think about what is happening to the city around us. It feels like we have little to no control over how things are shaping up. The ideas that we think are good for the city, the spaces that we want for the city, and the vision that is laid out for us seems so incompatible with each other that it almost seems impossible that the divide could ever be bridged. But we have to change that. We cannot let it remain that way. Because we are what makes the city. And so we should be able to engage with it on our own terms. What are the ways that I engage with in the built environment in the city? I do it in 3 ways. I do it as an academic, I do it as a practitioner, just setting up practice in the city, and I do it more importantly and more often as a citizen of the city. I know that all of you in this audience who are here today can relate to at least one of these manifestations, if not more. So even if I'm talking from my own personal perspective, I know that all of you can take something from what I'm saying to you. Architecture schools have a huge responsibility when it comes to highlighting the powerful impact design has on the lives of so many people around us. They're supposed to teach students how to think of the built environment, the role it has in playing in shaping the way we interact with each other. Unfortunately, in the case of Pakistan, many schools fail to do so. Part of the reason is the way the entire profession has been structured, where schools are made responsible for churning out ready-made practitioners rather than humanistic thinkers, who use design as a tool to improve the modern urban condition. I believe that our pedagogical concerns should be made more humane rather than just remain purely technical or purely geared towards skill development. Because we are thinking beings, and to allow ourselves to be just concerned about notions of progress and development in such a narrow sense, separate from the human condition, is a disservice to ourselves as thinking beings. So as an academic, I try to make my students aware of their capacity to engage with the subtleties of design as a major force in shaping the city as a reflection of our values. I force them to see the hidden patterns in the city and to understand how even simple elements, like for example boundary walls between communities, represent values and shows how the city divides and isolates. I urge them to look at hidden patterns. I ask them to explore linkages where they might not be so obvious. As students, they can easily overlook these and dismiss them as beyond the concern of architectural design, and focus on design in isolation itself. As educators, we can push them to only worry about sharpening their aesthetic impulse or the spatial understanding of the one-two task of an architect. But for me personally, I strive to ensure that each student that I engage with is able to approach any design concern with a nuance that extends just beyond good design that looks good and functions well, and to look for ways in which design can be used as a tool for social commentary. And yet, this is not just a problem of academia. Academia can only go so far in shaping our experiences or our perspective on things. It is when we have the capacity to act on them in practice that is where the real challenges lie. And unfortunately, many architects and planners in this city are complicit in the creation or in the exaggeration of some of the issues and surroundings that we feel dampen our urban experience. A project might feel really lucrative to us, or a project might seem like a good addition to our portfolio. But architects cannot think of design in isolation. They have the responsibility to think about the impact that their design will have on the city, on the people that will inhabit those spaces. Because we are not passive agents when we're designing something. We are taking active positions when we design something, even if it's just a single room. And so we should be very careful about what we design, how we design it, who we design it for, and for what purpose we design it. So while I'm just setting up practice, I already know that I will going to face a tough road ahead of me, because I just cannot divorce my awareness of my position as an active agent in shaping the city around me from that of my practice. This means that I have to be more than just aware of the role of my design, but that I have to take an even tougher position. The position that not only will I not design projects or work on projects that will harm the people regardless of class, its ecology, its built environment, its cultural, tangible or intangible cultural heritage, but that I will actively resist and voice my opinion against those who do so. In doing so, my practice will be a constant voice of skepticism and criticism, as long as I can critique them effectively with my own design. This act of self-awareness is so important in practice, regardless of which field you belong to, and yet it is something that not many of us care about. And I just want to point out that this is something that I'm sure you can all relate to in the context of your own professions. Because this is not just limited to architecture. Architects are not only solely responsible for the city, every one of you is. So if you can't do it professionally, you are still a member of this society. And you have a role to play even if in a personal capacity. And that brings me to my engagement with the city as a citizen. This mode of engagement is not an option for us. It is a reality. We have rights as citizens. We have tremendous power as citizens. But it is very rare this sense of citizenship is acknowledged that we don't practice in our cities. Many of you in the audience who are from Lahore, I'm sure they're aware of the developing project, the multiple development projects that have been initiated all over the city and the issues surrounding them. Projects like the Orange Line, widening of the canal, and many other numerous infrastructure projects that have been initiated all over the city. I'm sure at least one of them has affected you in some capacity, on some level, at some point in time. If it hasn't yet, that means you're lucky and probably extremely privileged. But just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't ever. Let's take an example. That giant mall that is being constructed at the end of your neighborhood. It's not going to be just a giant mall that's going to house all those brands that you ever dreamt of being just a walking distance from with the added benefit of food court. What will that mall reflect? That mall reflects affluence, it reflects consumerism. But you can also say that it reflects that our city is now not much different from many of the global capitals that we aspire to live in at some point in time if ever given the chance. Sure. But what does a giant high-end mall reflect in a city where, for example, there is such a major housing shortage problem, as it is in Lahore? Or where, right behind the mall's beautiful mass, is in Kachi Basti due to that very shortage? What does the mall reflect then? It reflects apathy. It reflects inequality. It reflects disparity. It reflects that we have... So it has the potential to affect you. It might not affect you right now, but your rents might go higher in the next few months. The commute that you have every day might change. Land values might just blow up beyond your reach ever, not that they aren't already. So design has the capacity to affect you. If it hasn't yet, it might soon. And that is what I want you to recognize, that in subtle ways in which design changes the way we interact with each other. The subtle ways in which design changes the way we inhabit our spaces. So be skeptical of all the changes around you, and be willing to question everything, and to exercise your power to voice an opinion. The reason we are not always conscious about the role the built environment plays in shaping our lives is because we have no idea how the city works. With all of its systems and processes, we have no idea how the city works. And if you don't know how it works, how can you start to think of ways to engage with it? Have you ever thought about your local government? Does anyone in the audience know who your local representatives are? Have you ever thought who has the power to decide that the highway will cut right through the center of the city? Or not? Or at least who gave them the power to do so? Have you ever thought what and why was the reason that residential neighborhood was converted to a commercial neighborhood? Have you ever thought about why there are no more public spaces being established in the city? If you haven't, that's because you haven't realized yet that you have a more voice in making those decisions. I think I have painted a very grim picture of our city over here, and I just want to clarify, it's a very beautiful city, I love this city. But it's beautiful because of what we make it, every day. And that we have to be constantly engaged, and we have to be an active participant in making sure that it remains the city that we all love and cherish. To summarize, these are the key guiding principles for me. As an academic, I strive to create nuance in our understanding of the built environment and the role of architecture in it. As a practitioner, I encourage skepticism and criticism as a healthy tool for me to keep checking my own role in shaping the city. As a citizen, I urge awareness, willingness to engage, and strength to never concede space. These are the core principles that drive me every day. Particularly keeping in mind the women that inspire me, that I think to be my role models. Women like Parveen Rahman, who I respect as a practitioner and who spent 20 years of her life fully dedicated to the idea of the Rugby Pilot Project, working with the people of Karachi, for the people of Karachi. And people like Sabine Mahmood, the citizen extraordinary, not actually equality and intolerance in our cities, but also managed to create her own public institution that was open for everybody and everybody. That their contributions were so important that they gave up their lives for it, that they were murdered for it, that's what drives me every day. To think that their contribution was related to the built environment and to the idea of cities in democratic space, that is what drives me every day to be a better citizen, a better teacher, and a better architect. If you don't know who they are, look them up, because I hope that their courage and dedication drives you. So here at this talk, in such a short time slot, I can only put forward one simple idea. It's a very simple idea. And that is, know your city. Know it well. Know its strengths, know its weaknesses. Know it for its worth idea of a city, or also know that it can be extremely ugly if left to its own devices, and that it is the citizens of the city who should be able to write its narrative, because we are the ones who live its realities every day. Be skeptical of what is being told to you as for the benefit of the city. Be positively critical of what you experience around you, and be willing to take positions and fight for them. You are thinkers, you are practitioners, and you are citizens of this city. Recognize the power that holds and exercise it. Thank you.